Hello once again, it's not your boy That's No Moon, it's Licol, and we're back for the third episode of Under the Hood. God, it's really starting to feel like a real series now. We're on episode 3. Massive thank you to everyone who went and checked out the gas episode and gave me some feedback and threw it some support. Really appreciate it. And an even bigger thank you to those who went over to my channel and subscribed, because I noticed my own sub count jumped up quite drastically for my channel anyway. From the bottom of my heart, honestly, thank you so much for the support. It's appreciated by me and it's appreciated by Moon. I'm really sorry the gas episode was late, and I'm really sorry that this episode is very likely going to be late as well. I had production issues with the gas episode that honestly made me want to slip my wrists, and with this episode I got a chest infection a couple of weeks ago and it just kicked the living crap out of me, unfortunately. So yeah, I am really sorry that these episodes keep coming out late. I am going to try and do it with a bit more consistency. So if my voice sounds a little bit weaker, a little bit more faint as this episode goes on, it's because I'm still recovering from the chest infection, and I'm really sorry. I hope it doesn't detract from the informative and entertaining nature of this video. So, before we get into the team of the episode, which is CLS, which is my favourite team, so really exciting episode for me, just a couple of things before we start. So, if you like this video, please consider throwing it a like, and if you're not already subscribed to Moon's channel, please consider hitting that sub button. The guy makes amazing free-to-play Star Wars Galaxy of Hero content, and Moon's just a top bloke in general. We like Moon over here, so please show him your support, and let's keep his momentum up, because he really is doing well now. We're going to get him into those big leagues, whatever it takes. I'm really sorry that I have to keep saying that at the beginning of every video as well, guys. Basically, the YouTube bots like it, the overlords, whatever they are, that there's bots in place that detect for people saying that, and they really like it and are more likely to shove Moon into people's suggested watches. So I am really sorry. It's unfortunately a very necessary evil. Now on to the unnecessary evil. So, if you like what I do specifically, and you like this series, and you like me as a person, and you'd like to show me a little bit of gratitude for this series, I have my own personal sci-fi audiobook series here on YouTube. It's in a bit of a rough state. It's a one-man band at the end of the day, so please do remember that if you do go check it out. It's sort of grim sci-fi, sort of epic sci-fi, grim sci-fi. It's great for long journeys, or if you're just looking to check out a new series. It's honestly, I think it's great. Why wouldn't I say that? I've put, a lot of work into it. So yeah, if you want to show me some gratitude, please go over to it and sub, and it would make my day even more if you could check it out. So yeah, and I did it without rambling, so gold star for me. And now that's all out of the way, let's get on with the engine of the episode, Commander Luke Skywalker. Now, CLS is a team that I would recommend every single player, new and old, to work on. And there's 3 very good reasons for this. Number 1, this team will follow you and be viable with you all the way from the early game all the way to the end game. It's quite an easy unlock, it's quite easy to get the engine pieces. I mean, Chewie isn't easy, but he is easy compared to like Gas and Galactic Legends and Malak and so forth. So yeah, he will follow you all the way through the game. It's a brilliant team for that, for longevity basically. Number 2, this team is extremely versatile. I would even stake a claim saying it is the most versatile team in the game, and we'll get onto that when we get onto the counters and the even Stevens a little bit more in depth. But CLS is extremely flexible, and that is another reason to work on him. When you're in a pinch, he can kind of be relied upon as a safe option to use. Number 3, this is a team that will never not be relevant, and I didn't word that very well, but what I mean by that is, CG has made it no secret they absolutely have a massive soft spot for the original trilogy Rebels. And whenever CLS dips in viability, they tend to release a character that brings him all the way back up to the top. We've seen it 3 times so far in the game. So when Trey was meta and CLS started falling out of favour, they released Chewbacca, and that made him the soft counter to the Trey meta at the time. Then Jedi Knight Revan came along and took over the meta, and they released C-3PO and made CLS the hard counter to the old meta of Trey and the soft counter to Jedi Knight Revan. And then they released Chewpio a while back, and Chewpio has just brought CLS back to the top, and I would even stake a claim as to say CLS is now the best non-galactic legend team in the game. So that's reason number 3. You're never going to have a wasted investment if you work on this engine, because it's always going to get love in the form of new characters, or even reworks, I would say, when they've run out of characters. So that is why you should invest in CLS. Now, when we talk about what kind of team Commander Luke is and what sort of engine he's running, it's a bit of a tricky one, because you see, Commander Luke has kind of evolved as the game's progressed, and he used to be one thing and I now think he's another. So back in the old days, I would have categorized Commander Luke as a minefield team, and don't worry, I will make a video one day explaining all these stupid categorizations I keep dubbing teams with. But the long and short of a minefield team and its mechanic is, it's a very defense-orientated team, and the enemy has to be careful when they're attacking it. They have to be careful when they're attacking and who they're attacking, because they don't want it to blow up in their face. Like back in the day, you would want to hit Han because he's frail, but you wouldn't want him to come back at you because the trade-off of generally wasn't worth it. So that's what Commander Luke kind of used to be. A good reference for what a minefield team is in the modern days, I would say Padme. Padme is a very good example of a minefield team. But that's not what CLS is anymore. I would say CLS is nowadays more of what I would call a breach and clear team. Now, the idea of a breach and clear team, the core foundation of it is, it's all about opening really strong, unloading on the enemy, putting the enemy under control, pinning them down, compromising them, crippling them before they've even taken their first turn. So when they do retaliate, they're not in a very good way. And that is what I would say CLS is now. It's more of a breach and clear team. It's all about being more offense orientated and opening strong and crippling the enemy before it's even moved. A good breach and clear team will take sort of 5 to 10 turns before the enemy takes its first. It's not always the case. Sometimes there will be a stray turn here and there, but if you've got your team modded well and you're playing it properly, it's quite easy to take loads of turns before the enemy takes one. Another example of a breach and clear team, just for context, is the Imperial Troopers, which I'm hoping we'll address one day soon, because I know Moon loves his troopers and a lot of you guys do too. Now, when we address the Commander Luke engine specifically and what makes it run, we need to address 3 principles. We need to take note. Number 1, damage. This team does so much damage, and it does it really quick. I wouldn't be surprised if you did the maths of it, if this team could put out the most damage in the shortest space of time. It really does do a lot of damage, this engine. Number 2 is control, and this is quite often an ignored aspect of the Commander Luke engine. This team is all about control. It's all about pushing the enemy back and putting them under lock and key and neutralizing things like tanks. All about pinning your enemy down and pushing them back. Control is the second principle of this engine. And number 3, there is a failsafe in place if the control doesn't stick, and that's what I absolutely love about CLS. The enemy is damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they accept the control and they accept the detrimental effects, it's not good for them because they're getting hindered. And if they don't, if they try and resist, well, they're going to bring the pain around a lot quicker back to their face. So, yeah. Absolutely love that about the Commander Luke engine. But that's the 3 principles. We've got damage, we've got control, and we've got a failsafe if the control doesn't stick. So that's the principles of the engine. What are the components? So, like most team engines, Commander Luke clocks in on the average of 3 components, that being these 3 characters right here. We've got Commander Luke, obviously, Han Solo, the raid version, and Chewbacca, the legendary version. Now, when we address what each character contributes to the team, they basically all contribute the same thing, apart from Chewie, but we'll get onto that when we talk about Chewie. But it's damage and it's control, and the important distinction is whether or not it's their primary job or their secondary job, so that's what we'll address. So, starting with Commander Luke, his primary job, believe it or not, is actually control. A lot of people think it's damage, and I'm not saying Luke doesn't hit hard, he does hit hard. But his main job is to actually control the enemy and to control his own team. And we'll see that when we look at his kit. He's all about control, Commander Luke. His secondary job, of course, is damage, because like I said, I wasn't saying Luke doesn't hit hard. He does hit really damn hard. He's just kind of the weakest hitter in this engine, which isn't really fair to compare to, because, you know, he's next to the 2 of the hardest hitting characters in the game. So, not really a fair comparison, but I would definitely say damage second, control first for Commander Luke. Now, when we talk about Han, Han is the complete inverse of CLS, because Han's primary job is damage. He absolutely mollywops the enemy with his damage. And then his secondary job is control, because believe it or not, Han also has some really cool control mechanics, and it really helps sort of push the enemy back. And finally we have Chewie, and now Chewie, unlike Han and CLS, who are both lazy, has 3 jobs instead of 2. His primary job, believe it or not, is not control and it's not damage. His primary job is that Chewie is the pseudo tank. Now I don't want to patronize people and assume that you don't know what the word pseudo means, but just so I've got my bases covered, it basically means imitating something you're not. And Chewie is not a tank, he's an attacker. He's got it on the tag and he's kind of got it built into his kit. However, if the enemy is playing this against this team correctly, if the enemy is going against CLS properly, as it should, and attacking correctly, Chewie will draw all the fire while ever he's on the battlefield. He will taunt without taunting. He'll have a little invisible taunt above his head. Because he does, he draws fire. He takes the heat off of the 2 troublesome characters, which is CLS and Han. So that's Chewie's primary job. He is the pseudo tank. His secondary job is damage. Chewie outputs a horrific amount of damage. I wouldn't want to stake my life on it, but I would guess if you tallied up who did the most damage at the end of the battle, Chewie would probably come in first because of his assist mechanics and his uniques. His tertiary job, his third job in the team, is control. Chewie can also put the enemy under control. He can dispel buffs and put people under stun, which is always great. It locks characters in place. So his third job is control. And that's the engine, that's the characters that compose the engine and their main contributions. So let's move on to the characters and the components specifically. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. So, as is tradition, we'll start with the leader, Commander Luke, and his lead. Now, Commander Luke's lead is absolutely timeless. It is immortal. It's always going to be good. So to start with, you get a defense boost and an offense boost, and that's great. It's always nice to take less damage and deal more damage yourself. But where this leadership really pops is in its two secondary aspects. The first being that Commander Luke will grant all rebel allies 50% counter chance. There's no damage reduction on that counter as well. They will hit back for the full damage. I don't think I need to tell you why it's amazing that the faction that prioritizes burst damage becomes incredibly dangerous when they are given a coin flip, essentially. And for Han and Luke, it's even more than a coin flip. There is a coin flip chance that they will hit you back if you hit them. Absolutely amazing part of the lead. And that used to be the minefield mechanic. You used to have to be really careful when you attacked, because if the enemy wasn't dazed, and Han hit you back, it wasn't a good trade. Trust me, believe me on that. The second part of the lead that makes the leadership pop, and what contributes more, I would say, nowadays to this breach and clear mentality, is the fact that whenever the enemy resists a detrimental effect inflicted by a rebel, all rebel allies will gain 5% turn meter. Now, a detrimental effect doesn't just mean debuffs, it also means turn meter reduction, so characters who are immune to turn meter reduction can help proc this lead. And this is the failsafe to the control. So, if the enemy wants to be cute and stack up on tenacity, guess what? They're going to bring around these hard-hitting rebels to basically punch them in the face again a lot quicker with this lead in effect. And you might think that 5% turn meter, oh, that's nothing, that's not a lot, that's not enough to make a significant difference. Well, when you start seeing how many debuffs the rebels actually put out, especially the Commander Luke rebels, when you see all the detrimental effects they put out, this is a turn meter engine that can honestly rival the Papa Palpatine Express if your enemies are being tenacious. So that's Commander Luke's lead. Amazing lead. You get offense, you get defense, but most importantly, 50% counter chance, which is still relevant. It's just not so much relevant to the breach and clear mechanic. And you get the turn meter gain when your control is negated. Absolutely fantastic lead right there. Now on to Luke's uniques, and Luke's uniques are more focused towards him controlling his own team than they are controlling the enemy, which you'll sort of see when we address them. So his first unique is called Learn Control. Now, You don't get a little blue buff like you do with Coyote-Mundi, but Luke actually has 2 stances. He's either in Call to Action or he's being restrained and in Learn Control, which is what this unique is called. And it's very lore-friendly, I feel, because we get both versions of the Empire Strikes Back Luke, and I absolutely love that. So we've got Luke when he's learning under Yoda and he's controlling himself and sorting out his emotions, and then we also get the Luke that was reckless and went to fight Vader, and I think his stances reflect that perfectly. So Luke will be in his Learn Control stance whenever he doesn't have the Call to Action buff, and what he'll get is 50% counter chance, so he basically gets 100% counter chance with his lead when he's in this stance. He'll get 50% defense and 10% turn meter when a rebel takes damage, and if you apply the Zeta, he'll also get 100% tenacity, which is basically guaranteeing to shrug off most debuffs from characters that aren't modded for potency, and he'll also get critical avoidance, 50%, that is also huge. So this is a very defense-orientated Luke when he's in this stance. This unique, however, it's not passive all the time. Like I say, it's one half of his 2 stances. So that's Learn Control. His next unique is called It Binds All Things, and this is the first ability of Luke's that you will want to Zeta when you're applying Zetas to this guy. So what It Binds All Things will give you is a 40% potency boost. That's fantastic because Luke sticks a lot of debuffs, but he also does a lot of damage. So what this unique is basically there to do is offset the needs for potency mods, which is absolutely fantastic. He'll also heal when he resists detrimental effects, but the most important part of this unique is the fact that if you put the Zeta on, he will grant turn meter every time he inflicts a debuff. Now, both of his attacks inflict 2 debuffs, and he'll get 10% turn meter for himself and 5% for the team for each debuff. So that's 20% turn meter for Luke if both debuffs land, and 10% for his team. That is massive. It's massively speeding his team back up, and the rebels are pretty fast anyway, so, you know, it's a very, very dangerous Zeta to be on the other side of, believe me. And that's Luke's uniques. They're all about keeping his team going and sort of boosting himself and basically controlling his own team and controlling himself. Next, we'll address his special, and it's called Call to Action. Now, this is where Luke changes stances. So, when you use this ability, Luke will cleanse all debuffs from himself. He'll get 100% turn meter, which is basically a bonus turn, but bear in mind, it's not a bonus turn, it's turn meter gain. So, characters like Hux will shut it down, so do keep that in mind if you're fighting First Order and Hux is in there. It's not a bonus turn, even though, you know, it's 100% turn meter, so it kind of is. He'll heal 40% health and 40% protection, so 80% of his hit points back basically, and then he'll gain the Call to Action buff, which is essentially him switching stances. Now, when Luke's got the Call to Action buff, he loses all those bonuses from Learn Control, so he loses all those really nice, amazing defensive bonuses. However, there is a very decent trade-off when he's in this stance. He will get 50% accuracy, 50% critical damage, 50% critical chance, but where this buff is amazing and where this stance is amazing, Luke will ignore Taunt. So tanks cannot save the weak, frail characters from Luke when he's in this stance. So he's doing more damage when he's in this stance, and he's going for whoever he wants to go for, not, you know, what taunts dictate. So that's Call to Action, and that's the Call to Action buff, which is Luke's second stance. And that's Luke's one and only special ability, so let's move on to the attacks. Now, Luke's got 2 attacks, he's got a basic and a special, but to be honest, with how the basic works, it's kind of like having 2 specials, because there's nothing basic about it. So we'll address that first. So Luke's basic is called Destin Strike. It deals damage and inflicts 2 debuffs, defense down and speed down, not the worst debuffs in the world, but not the best either. But where this ability gets really good is that if Luke hits the enemy again, so if he hits the enemy and these debuffs have stuck and they're still on the enemy when he hits them again, he will apply a detrimental effect. So if the enemy still has defense down, he'll stun them. If the enemy still has speed down, he will remove 30% turn meter. And if the enemy has both, he will add extra insult to injury by inflicting both detrimental effects. So he will not only pin them in place with a stun, but he'll also push them back for when they get out of that stun. So absolutely incredible basic there. Something else to note about Luke's basic is that it is not exclusive to his debuffs, so if you have other characters in the team that put defense down or speed down, Luke still inflicts the second half of his basic. He will still stun them and he'll still remove turn meter, so that's something to keep in mind when you're doing mishmashy teams, I suppose. Now we'll address Luke's special attack. It's called Use the Force, deals damage, it removes 100% turn meter from the enemy, which is great, you're robbing them of a turn basically. It will dispel all buffs on them, and it will put tenacity down and buff immunity on them too, so it's great for controlling tanks, this ability I find. It'll also reduce its own cooldown by 1 if the target is under 100% health when the ability is used, not if it takes the target under 100%, it's if they were already under 100%, it'll reduce its cooldown. So, as you can see, Luke's attacks are more geared towards controlling the enemy than they are his own team. And this is what I'm talking about when I say Luke is all about control. Like, you've just listened to me list off his kit. It's all about giving your team turn meter and taking away the enemy's turn meter and pinning them down. This is why Luke, he's all about controlling the enemy. And with that said, we'll wrap up CLS there and move on to Han. Now, Han's kit is a lot more simple when compared to Commander Luke's. He's got a basic, a special attack, a special ability, a unique, and that's all he really needs to do his job. So, let's start with his basic. His basic's called Quick Draw, and if you've got the Zeta, it will double tap, and it will apply an effect depending on where the enemy is at in their turn meter cycle. So, if the enemy's got lower than 50% turn meter, he'll do 75% more damage, which is great. I mean, this attack hits hard anyway. And then if they've got higher than 50% turn meter, he will remove 35% of it, which is really good. It helps push the enemy back with some control. And it's unavoidable, this attack. That's another important thing. Foresight, evasion chance, it cannot bypass this attack. Now, onto his special attack. It's called Deadeye, and this is an absolute mollywop of an attack. It's offense in a can, basically. It'll do a horrendous amount of damage. You'll see, you know, on enemies with low defense, you'll see numbers of like 120k if you've got the mods good and the gear good. It also stuns the enemy. That's great. You know, we're helping, again, we're putting the enemy under control and pinning them down. But where this ability is most amazing, I feel, is that Han will gain turn meter equal to his critical chance after using this attack. And unless you're an absolute idiot, and you really, really are trying hard not to do this, it's very hard to mod Han to have less than 100% critical chance, especially when you factor in his unique. So this, again, it amounts to a bonus turn, I would say. Again, Hux can prevent it. Any characters that prevent bonus turn meter gain will stop this. It's not a bonus turn, but it kind of is because it's 100% turn meter, but do remember characters like Hux can stop it. But yeah, it's basically you get to smack the enemy in the face, and then you get to smack them in the face again. So, you know, Han hits really bloody hard. There's nothing wrong with that in my book. At least from my end, anyway. This ability is also really good for putting an enemy under control and then taking away the turn meter of someone who's about to go by following up with the basic as well. I just thought I would throw that out there too, as a tip. Onto his special ability. Now, this ability, it's called Never Tell Me the Odds. It used to be absolutely useless. No one in their right mind ever used this ability before Chewie came along. But then Chewie came along and it kind of became okay to use. So, Never Tell Me the Odds. It will give Han 50% turn meter. It will give him critical damage up. And then he will give critical chance up and evasion up to everyone, including himself. Now, this used to be completely useless, there was never any point to use it, but now that we've got Chewie and Chewie assists, you can use this ability, buff yourself up, buff your team up, increase their evasion, and still do some damage thanks to Chewie. So that's Han's special ability, probably his worst ability in his kit, to be honest. So, let's move on to Han's one and only unique. His unique is called Shoots First, because of course it is. CG's officers would probably get burned to the ground if they didn't include an ability called that in this version of the character. And what Shoots First is going to give you is 35% counter chance, so 85% with Luke's lead, 20% critical chance, but where this ability just shines and transcends Han into one of the best characters in the game is the bonus turn mechanics. So, what will happen is at the start of the battle, Han will take a bonus turn. Nothing can supersede it apart from a faster Han, so this turn cannot be prevented and no one can go before it apart from a faster Han if you're mirror matching. And during this bonus turn, Han can only use his basic, but the properties of his basic have been modified. So during this bonus turn, Han ignores taunt, so a pre-taunting tank can't protect whoever Han's going to go after. And it will also guaranteed stun the target for 1 turn, unless they've got stun immunity, so don't think you can go after Galactic Legends or, you know, like Jedi Knight Luke, for example. But other than that, it will stun the enemy for 1 turn and pin them in place. So this ability is amazing. It really feeds into that breach and clear mentality. The charge has gone off on the door, and Han's the first one in, and he immediately pins down and immobilizes the biggest threat in the room. So that shoots first. And that wraps up Han's kit right there. He's an absolutely amazing character. His kit is reasonably simple apart from the bonus turn mechanic, but he's basically there to do a bunch of damage and pin the enemy down. So that's Han Solo. Absolutely amazing, phenomenal character. Really lives up to his film counterpart. And to round off with this engine, we will finish with Chewie Chewbacca, the legendary version of him, by the way, because there's a lot of Chewies in this game. We'll start with his attacks. He's got a basic and he's got 2 special attacks. His basic is so simple. He deals damage and inflicts tenacity down. Nothing wrong with tenacity down in this team. You want your debuffs to land nice and simple and nice and useful. His second attack, his first special attack, I should say, is called Pulverize, and this is an AoE attack, but what's cool about it is that it will dispel all buffs, so it's great against teams like Padme who stack up that protection up. It will give Chewie critical chance up and offense up, and this attack also ignores defense. Nice and simple attack there as well. Then his third attack is called Furious Bowcaster. Now, this attack will stun the enemy, and if the target's got no protection, it will reset the cooldown of Pulverize. So you use Pulverize first, and then Furious Bowcaster afterwards if the target has no protection, and you get to use Pulverize again. So again, really cool thing to keep in mind for things like Padme. So, as you can see, Chewie's attacks, they really help contribute to the control mechanic of the Commander Luke engine. You know, he's pinning the enemy down with stuns, so that's 3 stuns. All 3 of these characters stun. So you can make a 5v5 into a 5v2 if you can land all 3 stuns on different characters. He's also helping the team stick their detrimental effects with his tenacity down. And he's also robbing the team of buffs. So yeah, he's really good at contributing to that control mechanism with his attacks. Now the attacks are dealt with, let's move on to Chewie's uniques. He has 2. The first is called Raging Wookie, and what this will do is it will reduce the cooldown of Furious Bowcaster when him or a guarded ally takes damage. It ramps his offense and his critical chance up whenever he takes damage until his next turn, so a bit like Kylo Ren Mask gets ramping damage until he next attacks. But the big things about this ability are that if you put the Zeta on, it will make him immune to ability block and cooldown increase. And then this isn't part of the Zeta, by the way, but this is probably the biggest part of the ability. Chewie will do 20% health damage to whoever he attacks, assuming and providing his attack actually hits. So it won't work if you evade the attack. But if Chewie's attack lands, he'll deal 20% health damage to the enemy. That's absolutely huge. It's basically an unresistible expose getting popped every time Chewie's attack lands. Like I say, there's only a few characters. There's Malak, Crew, Kylo Ren Masked, and the Galactic Legends. They're the only characters that can nullify that damage. Anyone else is getting chopped down very quickly by that unique when Chewie's landing his attacks, and he goes very often, as you'll see when we talk about his second unique. And speaking of his second unique, that 20% health damage pairs very nicely with Loyal Friend. Now, what this will do is it will hand out a buff called Guard. Now, Raid Han will always get that buff. He will always get Guard as long as Chewie's on the field. And then the weakest ally in the team will also get that buff. Now, if you've got the team modded right, that weakest ally should always be Commander Luke. And there's a very good reason for that. Now, Guard does 2 things. So first things first, whenever a guarded ally makes a move, they don't even have to attack, they just have to use an ability. Chewie will assist them. He'll deal 20% less damage from his base offense, but he'll still do that full 20% health damage, so it doesn't really matter about the damage reduction. Basically, Chewie will assist the guarded ally and absolutely whack the enemy for a bunch of their health. And the second thing Guard does is it will provide bonuses to the guarded character themselves. So guarded allies become immune to critical hits. I don't need to tell you why. That's massive on frail characters like Han. They will become immune to stun, and they'll become immune to daze. They'll get a little bit of critical chance, but the big thing there is stun immunity and daze immunity. Remember, the Commander Luke team counterattacks. How do you shut down counterattacks? You stun and you daze the enemy. You stun and you daze whoever's going to counterattack. So this basically makes it impossible to stop Han from counterattacking and Commander Luke from counterattacking. That's huge. It also makes Han, who is an incredibly frail character who's very easy to bring down in a matter of hits, able to take a punch now with that guard because you can't critically hit him. So yeah, guard is an absolutely incredible mechanic. The second part to Loyal Friend is that if Chewie deals damage, providing you've got the Zeta of course, if Chewie deals damage, he will heal both himself and his guarded allies 3% health and protection. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you see how frequently this team goes and how frequently Chewie assists, you can basically take a massive punch and then by the end of the battle you'll be back up to full health and protection. The 3% is actually quite a lot when you see how many turns Chewie will take. So as you can see from Chewie's uniques, this is where his kind of pseudo tank mechanic comes into play. You don't want to be hitting the guarded allies. They're going to counterattack you. You know, you're not going to be able to... It's not going to be a fair trade when you hit Han and you don't crit him and then he hits you back and he does crit you, because he will, because of his critical chance. You know, you're forced to go after Chewie, basically, because you have to get rid of Chewie to get rid of Guard. Guard will stay up as long as Chewie is on the battlefield. So that's what I'm saying when I say he has an invisible taunt on his head. You know, you don't want to be hitting the guarded allies because you're going to be resetting Chewie's cooldowns. You kind of don't want to be hitting Chewie because you're going to be ramping his offense, but you do need to get him out of there so you can get rid of the dynamic duo, Han and CLS, who are going to be causing most of the trouble on the team. So that is why Chewie is a pseudo tank. It's because of that loyal friend. It's because of that raging Wookie. He's taunting without taunting, basically. And that wraps up Chewie, and with wrapping up Chewie, we've wrapped up the engine. That's what makes up the CLS engine. 3 characters who do a bunch of damage, who can pin the enemy down and prevent them taking turns, and who can basically kind of sort of protect each other every time they attack. They help heal themselves back up. So, let's move on to gear. Now, I'm going to try not to ramble so much with the gear because, you know, it's the same with every team. The higher the gear, the better it's obviously going to be, but I'm still going to try and give my minimum and recommended specs for the gear so that you have an idea of what to shoot for. So, starting with CLS. CLS is the kindest gear on the team. You can get away with CLS at gear 12 plus, believe it or not. I would say plus, you do need that extra 12 speed from those 2 gear 12 plus pieces. But you'll get away with it. Because Chewie is assisting, he's kind of making up for the loss of damage, and CLS is more about control in the early days anyway, when you've got him at a low gear. So gear 12 plus, he'll be absolutely fine. He'll do his job. He won't be amazing, but he will do his job. What I would recommend for Commander Luke, though, is definitely gear 13 Relic 5. He hits really hard. It's good to give him that damage, and you also want him fast, so you want that extra 8 speed from that finisher. So yeah, for Commander Luke, gear 12 plus bare minimum, but I would recommend gear 13 Relic 5 so that, you know, he's hitting a bit harder and pulling his weight a bit more in the damage department. Now, moving on to Han. Han is the harshest gear requirement, I would say, because he does the most damage in the team. He's incredibly frail, so you absolutely want this guy at gear 13 Relic 5 minimum. You want his damage. You want to be squeezing every point of damage you can out of him, so I'd say absolute bare minimum, get him to Relic 5. What I would recommend, though, is gear 13 Relic 7. It's one of those niche characters that falls into that club of non-galactic legends and non-legendaries who deserve it, but he's honestly worth it at Relic 7. Every point of damage you can squeeze out of Han is worth it. He's also got a really, really good ship. His ship is the linchpin of the Rebel fleet, so absolutely not a wasted investment there. So minimum Relic 5, but I would honestly take him to Relic 7. It's worth it. Then moving on to Chewie. Now, Chewie is a tank. I don't care what anyone says about, you know, like, oh, he's mainly there for offense and stuff. He's not. He's there to draw fire, and he's a tank. And the general rule of thumb with all tanks in the game is you need them to be able to take a punch. And with that said, the bare minimum you want Chewie is gear 13. absolutely. Give him that finisher, give him that little boost, get him up to gear 13 so he can at least take a hit. When it comes to recommendations, though, I would recommend Relic 5 to even up to all the way up to Relic 7, to be honest. But Relic 5 is probably a good starting point. You're going to have to get him to Relic 6 to get Jedi Master Luke anyway, so get him close to that anyway. But yeah, you're not really giving Chewie a relic to up his damage, because the main bulk of his damage really does come from that 20% health damage that he does from his unique. You're more making him more survivable, so that if you're mirror matching and Han, you know, the 1 in 5 chance Han goes for Chewie, he's gonna stay standing in the fight. So that is the gear. Let's move on to mods. Now, when it comes to Commander Luke, there's probably 3 stages you're going to take in his life cycle in the game, whether you're early, mid, or end game. And there's 3 different ways to mod him based on that. So, when you first got the very basic semblance of a Commander Luke team, I would say you want to be prioritizing speed mods. Give him a speed set, make him really fast, because the control is more important than the damage at that point in the game when you're running an early CLS team. Speed secondaries, absolute must on all of these characters, basically. This is not a kind team when it comes to those juicy speed secondaries. But yeah, in the early game, I would say give Commander Luke speed. When you reach the mid-game and you've maybe got him to gear 13, I would swap out that speed for crit damage mods with high-speed secondaries. He's kind of able to pull his weight in the damage department then, and you'll probably have C-3PO in the lineup, and you will be wanting to blitz enemies down hard and fast. So definitely swap out that speed for some crit damage. But the caveat is you need really good speed secondaries still. You still want Luke going very, very fast. Then when you get to the end game with Luke, when you get the pinnacle, the current pinnacle CLS team, you want to be swapping out that crit damage for offense. And that's not because something magically happens to CLS when you get to the end game. CLS's kit doesn't change, his stats don't change. It's because of who you're going to be running with him. There's going to be more offensive benefit to running him with offense mods than there is for crit damage mods. So that's how you mod CLS. In the early game, speed all the way. In the mid game, crit damage, but also with good speed secondaries. And then in the end game, run him with offense. Because trust me, the trade-off is really worth it when you factor in the team as a whole. One final disclaimer when it comes to modding CLS, and then I promise I'll stop rambling about him. One big no-go for CLS is that you do not want to be modding him for health, and you do not want to be modding up his protection. Do not put health on his, or protection on his triangle or his cross. I know you can't help it with the circle, but you really want to avoid stacking up Commander Luke's health. The reason for this is because of Chewie's guard. It goes to the weakest ally. The weakest ally is whoever has the lowest combined health and protection. So make sure that you mod CLS to have as low health and protection as possible, so that he absolutely 100% gets that guard. Because guard is most useful when it's with CLS, because he's very fast, he ignores taunt, so he can help Chewie bring that pain round really quickly to characters who are protected by taunts and so forth. So yeah, make sure you mod Luke as the weakest character in the entire team. Make sure he's got the lowest combined health and protection. Rambling about CLS over. Now we'll move on to Han. Han is really, really simple. He's nowhere near as complicated as Commander Luke is. Basically, run him with crit damage all the way through the game. You want a crit damage triangle, an offense cross. I would say speed arrow though, because you want Han fast just in case you've got to do a mirror match. But yeah, crit damage mods. There's no reason to run anything else. This guy can crit 100% of the time, so no need to worry about that. Mod Han for crit damage. When it comes to Chewie, I see people advocating offense and crit damage, and I can kind of see the logic in it. He is an attacker at the end of the day, why not? But here's the thing, he's not. He's the team pseudo-tank. If you want to be able to use this team both on offense and defense, I would honestly suggest modding him for health and modding him for protection and modding him for defense. Mod him like a tank. Make him be able to take a punch. And the reason for this is, it's great having him with high offense when you're using him on offense, but when you slap him on defense, anyone who's not an idiot is going to go straight for Chewie. They're going to gun him down as quick as possible to make Han vulnerable, and then once Han and Chewie are gone, their team is kind of in a very weak spot. However, if Chewie can take the punch, the opening punch from the other Han or from the Jedi Knight Revan's mark or whoever attacks Chewie first, it leaves your team in a very good spot when it's on defense. I don't get the argument for offense. Most of Chewie's damage comes from that health percent damage. It's not really coming from his flat offense. It's coming from the fact that he will automatically do the same damage as an expose as long as his attack hits. So that's my advice. It's probably an unpopular opinion, but I would mod Chewie like a tank. I would stack his health, stack his protection, and stack his defense. And just as a little brag or a caveat to that, I have never ever lost a CLS mirror match. I can promise you, hand on my heart, I've never lost, because even when they do go for Chewie in the opening barrage, he can take those punches. So yeah, unpopular opinion, but I would say mod Chewie like a tank, because he does draw fire. And the final area to address when it comes to mods for all these characters, so not just for Chewie, is speed secondaries aplenty. Han, Luke, and Chewie, you want them going as fast as possible. You want these guys to be able to run circles around the enemy, and how do you do that? You take turns, and how do you take more turns? You need high speed. So you don't have to put your arena meta mods on this team to make it work, but you do need to be prioritizing some of your better speed secondary mods for this team. They are honestly worth it. The faster you can make them, the better they're going to be at this breach and clear, this sort of blitzing down the enemy and running circles around the enemy. So, you know, bear that in mind. Every character in this engine, every component of this engine, they need some of your best speed mods if you can spare it. And that is the mods addressed and done with. And with that, that is the CLS engine addressed. That is what comprises it, that's how you gear it, that's how you mod it, and that's the kits. Really simple engine. You're basically just punching the enemy down and you're pinning them down. And if they refuse to be pinned down, you're punching them again. That's the CLS engine in a nutshell, basically. So, who do you run with the engine? Who do you run with these 3 core characters to get the best out of the team? Now, CLS is a bit weird because you see, throughout your play time in the game, so when you're early and mid-game and end-game, you'll kind of run different characters with it because it'll depend on whether or not you go all in on Rebels or whether you just let them unlock at a natural rate. But here is who I would run in each stage of the game's life. So, in the early game, when you're in early game play and you've just sort of unlocked Commander Luke and you've just unlocked Han and you've just unlocked Chewie, I would recommend running R2-D2 with them because R2-D2 is awesome, number crunch is amazing, he can put characters under stealth, just a really good rebel character basically, his rebel synergy is amazing, and I would also run a rebel tank, either Old Ben or Stormtrooper Han. The reason you would want to run a rebel tank like Old Ben or Stormtrooper Han is 1, they're part of the requirements, so why not, you'll already have the character at 7 stars, but 2 is because if you run a tank, it's very easy and you don't have to put as much gear on this character to make Luke the weakest character in the team still. Tanks have really naturally high health and protection, so it's quite easy to get, you know, like Old Ben, even if he's only like gear 9 or gear 10, or even Stormtrooper Han if he's only like gear 10, gear 11, it's quite easy to get them past Commander Luke when it comes to the health and protection, so Commander Luke will get the guard. Not to mention, they are both 2 really solid rebel tanks. Stormtrooper Han will just feed the rebels a nice, awesome turn meter train once he taunts, and Old Ben's just a great all-round tank. He's got his one trick, he's got his taunt will reappear if you get rid of it. You know, when he dies, he buffs the rebels up. Just great all-round character. Now, when you get to the second stage of CLS's lifespan in the game, when you get to sort of the mid-game, you've probably unlocked C-3PO, and you want to be swapping out that rebel tank for this golden guy. And the reason for that is you keep R2 in there, and you keep R2 in there for the same reasons you'll have him in the early game team. But the reason you want C-3PO in there is because C-3PO, he boosts the Commander Luke team up to new heights, to godlike heights with what he provides the team. He provides confusion, which is amazing. It's an amazing debuff that. He's got a mass assist. I mean, God, Rebels, mass assisting, they hit so hard. That's always great. The translation buff is awesome. It helps bring cooldown reduction and helps make the more frail Rebels a bit more tanky. But most important, when you're running C-3PO with the Rebels, is the fact that 1, he boosts potency, so those debuffs getting resisted is getting less and less likely when you've got C-3PO in the team, and the absolute best thing about C-3PO and the CLS team is that Rebels will then pop exposes on their basic attacks. So every time a rebel uses a basic, they'll pop an expose. So just to think about that for a second, Commander Luke uses his basic, he does his damage, he pops an expose, Chewie then follows up, he triggers Luke's expose and then pops another expose of his own. If you've got Chewie in there, he's triggering Chewie's expose and popping an expose of his own. Characters get chopped down fast. In a matter of a single turn, you're taking maybe 60% of someone's health away just in expose damage. That is absolutely insane, and absolutely why I know some people like running 3PO with Galactic Republic, but my god, what he does for the Rebels, it's so worth keeping him with the Rebels. Trust me on that one. So that's the second stage CLS team, I would say, when you're sort of heading into the mid-game. When you get to the end game, you know, you've probably rounded off all your core teams, your Jedi Knight Revans, your Darth Revan, your Gas, all of those good teams, and you come back to CLS and you want to give CLS that final last little bump to push him to the top of the majors. You will want to be going after 3PO and Chewie, affectionately known as Chewpio. Now what Chewpio does for the Rebels is he just takes them to a whole nother level when it comes to power. Chewpio makes CLS the best non-galactic legend team in the game. And you want to be swapping out R2 for Chewpio, so you want to be running 3PO and Chewpio as your two spare characters for the engine. The reason Chewpio just makes this team absolutely mind-blowingly amazing is the fact that, one, he assists every rebel, not just the guarded ones. His basic also pops an expose, which is just insane. Even more health percent damage coming to the enemy's way. He puts up blind. He's got a mass buff dispel, so him and Chewie can help keep Padme's protection up under control. He prevents characters assisting and attacking out of turn when they are blinded. But the reason you want him in the team, and the reason why he's so amazing with CLS, is because of, one, his AoE. His AoE attack is absolutely devastating. Completely and utterly devastating. It does so much damage. And the second reason you want him is because of his unique, and this is why you mod CLS for offense, by the way. His unique, I must tell the others. Basically, Chewpio will get 40% of the leader's max health, protection, offense, defense, potency, tenacity, and he'll give everyone else, including the leader, half of that. That's why you want to be running Commander Luke in the lead with offense, because you can make Chewie put out more damage, basically, Chewpio put out more damage, and he'll also make everyone else put out more damage, which is based on Commander Luke's offense, if that makes sense. So you want Luke to have a bunch of offense, because unfortunately crit damage is not something that the leader will give Chewpio, but offense is. So you definitely want to be modding Commander Luke for offense because of this unique. He'll also hand out some critical avoidance to the Rebels, so critical avoidance is always nice when it comes to endgame and Gear 13, because critical avoidance can be the difference between life and death. Anyone who's tried to take the Sith trio against Geos can attest to that when it comes to putting a critical avoidance arrow on Scion. Chewpio is amazing. You really... Once you've rounded out all your teams, you need to come back to CLS, you need to get Chewpio up and running, and that will give you the best non-galactic legend team in the game. Licol's stamp of approval on that. When it comes to modding and gearing these spare characters, I'm going to try not to ramble. Basically, with the Rebel tank, either Old Ben or Stormtrooper Han, you basically just want them to have enough health and protection that Luke gets the guard. So any gear that will boost them up enough so that Luke gets guard will be absolutely fine. When it comes to R2-D2, I would recommend Gear 12+. This character is an amazing character, and his number crunch Zeta is amazing. Definitely Gear 12+ as a minimum, but when it comes to what I'd recommend as a recommendation, I would say definitely go all the way to Relic 7 with R2-D2. He's one of the most versatile light side characters in the game. When it comes to C-3PO, it's kind of the same as the Rebel tank. C-3PO has no damage, and he very rarely gets targeted. So I would say just get his gear up high enough so that you can give Luke the guard. When it comes to Chewpio, I would say you can get away with him at Gear 12+. He'll still kind of do his job, but I would definitely say go to Relic 5 when you have got the resources, just because of how utterly devastating that AoE is once Chewpio's got some relics. When it comes to mods, I would say you want to be modding the Rebel tank with obviously health and protection, help make sure that they're stronger than Commander Luke. When it comes to that, when it comes to R2-D2, I say offense. R2-D2 is very pick and mix because of how number crunch works. It's basically whatever stats you want R2 to share out the most. I think offense though in this CLS lineup just because it's helping up that blitz damage. And when it comes to C-3PO, I would say mod him with potency. You might need to mod him with health just so that he's stronger than Commander Luke, depending on what gear level you've got him at. But generally I say potency. You really want confuse and those exposes that he sticks down to definitely land. And when it comes to modding Chewie, I would say mod him for critical damage. He can pretty consistently crit. And again, that AoE is utterly devastating, so you want him critting when he unleashes that AoE. So definitely crit damage on Chewie. Maybe offense if you don't have the crit damage mods to spare, but I would say crit damage on Chewie. And that is what's under the hood of the CLS team. That's the engine and the characters that you run with it. That's how you gear them. That's how you mod them. Now, I read the comments again in the gas video, and thank you to everyone for your feedback and for your support. I really honestly appreciate it. And one person in particular's comment stood out, Wyatt Holdsclaw, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. He asked if I could maybe offer some advice on how to play the team, like when I was talking about gas, and I think he's hoping I can do it in future episodes. The short answer to that is I can't really explain it in too much detail how to play each team against each other team individually, because I think the video would be like 10 hours long. But what I will do, because I do want to show you that I do listen to people's feedback, and I do want, you know, to encourage feedback and stuff, and to make my series better, I will offer at the end of every team from now on, I will offer one or two, like, what I would call golden rules when using the team. So this is a how to use in a general sense. Now, against certain teams, this rule won't apply, simply because some teams require very specific niche strategies. But I'm more on about in a general sense, when you're using the Commander Luke team in a very general sense. So, my golden tip for when you're running the Commander Luke team is keep an eye on the entire battlefield, don't get tactical tunnel vision. And what I mean by this is keep an eye on every enemy's turn meter. Look at whether or not they're about to take a turn and think about what they can and cannot do to your team. So don't get focused. Now, I know there are some teams like Darth Revan, for example, where nuking one character into oblivion is an absolute must or you lose the match. But in a general sense, when you're using CLS, if you've got, say, one character who's about to die, they've got very low health, but they've got barely any turn meter, but you've got another character that's got full health, but they're about to take a turn, and you're using Han or you're using CLS, knock back the full character's turn meter over taking out the weak link in the team. CLS can thrive when you keep hindering the enemy. You can blitz down the enemy team with the CLS lineup. You can, just burst damage one character into oblivion. But I find, just from personal experience, that this team works best when you hold the entire enemy at bay instead of just focusing down one. So that is my golden tip for using the CLS team. Keep an eye on the entire battlefield. Keep an eye on the enemy's turn meter. So I hope that's some decent advice, Wyatt. I know it's probably not what you were hoping for, but I'm hoping that when I do the counters that I can also give a few tips here and there for the Even Stevens teams to maybe help you along as well. So yeah, golden rule for the CLS team. Definitely keep an eye on everyone. Don't just get tactical tunnel vision. And we're in the final stretch of the video. We're on to the counters. It's been a bloody long one, just like gas, but I hope you've enjoyed, guys, and I hope you've learned something in watching this, and I hope you've got a new appreciation for CLS and see him as more than just a damage machine. So we're going to do the counters exactly the same way we did gas. So we've got the 4 categories. We've got Stomp, Overkill, Even Stevens, and No-Goes. If you want to know exactly what those categories are about, please feel free to go watch the gas video. I explain it there, but they kind of speak for themselves anyway. And as always, we will start with the Stomp. And when we look at the category of Stomp, we'll of course be looking at Darth Traya in the Sith Triumvirate. See, back when Traya was meta, CLS and Chewie were considered the soft counter, and then when 3PO came out, CLS became the hard counter, able to smash her into the ground. This is not a clean win though, and I do feel like I should state that you will likely lose all of your protection and very likely not have much of your health left either, so it's not good for banners in Grand Arena. Suppose it would be alright for territory wars though. You won't really see Traya on defense much anymore just because she's way too useful as pest control for, you know, Geos and Mon Mothma, but you might see her there now and then on defense. Basically, Traya will kill herself. Her team will kill themselves. I don't really need to give many tips. You need to focus down Nihilus and focus down Traya. Scion will kind of take care of himself. Very easy team to sort of blitz away, but you will lose most of your health and your protection. So you do need C-3PO for the counter to work, for it to be a hard counter anyway. I feel like I should state that, and I would ideally run R2-D2 in there, or if you're at the end game and you've got Chewie, definitely put Chewie in there and it kind of becomes a massacre. But yeah, CLS can absolutely stomp Traya, and yeah, if you're not sure, definitely a very safe and a very fair trade, I would say. When it comes to overkill, it's very, very simple really. Commander Luke Skywalker and his crew are basically overkill to every team that's not in his league, and when I'm talking about leagues, I'm on about the A-grade teams, the heavy hitters, you know, Night Sisters, Jedi Training Rey, Troopers, Old Republic, Bounty Hunters, First Order, CLS can, even a beginner CLS team with just the Rebel Tank and R2-D2 can swap most of these teams aside with casual ease, as long as you've got the engine up and running to the correct gear levels. So yeah, the only thing I would give you a little bit of warning about when we're talking about the overkill teams is First Order. If they have a Relic 7 crew, best not to take C-3PO in with you, just because you can end up in this horrible loop where crew keeps healing himself because of his lead, and you end up timing out. If you're taking Chewie though, you can often offset this because the AoE does so much damage that it kind of just eventually chips him down, but it's kind of dicey. Best not to take in a C-3PO if there is a Relic 7 crew on the First Order team. But yeah, in terms of overkill, everything that's not an A-grade heavy hitter team, CLS can just swat aside like it's nothing. When it comes to the Even Stevens, this is where CLS really shines. Not because he smashes, you know, these teams to pieces, but simply for the fact that he can beat them all with some level of consistency. Nothing particularly hard counters him, and he doesn't particularly hard counter any of them, and that's why I think he's the best non-galactic legend team. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's so versatile. When you're in a pinch and you're not sure who can get the job done, you can quite often rely on CLS to deal with these teams I'm about to mention now, with some level of pretty decent consistency, I would say. So when we're addressing Even Stevens as well, I also feel I should note I am talking solely about the pinnacle CLS team. You need C-3PO and you need Chewie running with the engine. It will not work if you don't have C-3PO and Chewie. It's just, it's some of these teams become no-goes, basically. So the first team we'll address is General Grievous. General Grievous is definitely an Even Stevens team. The tip I can give you for the General Grievous team is hope that you don't blitz the Magna Guard in the first turn. It's more about doing less damage than it is more. Once that target lock starts going out, Grievous becomes a problem, and I would say Grievous is the hardest Even Stevens team for CLS. You really, really, really do not want that target lock sticking early on. But the strategy to beating Grievous is very simple. Grievous is a time bomb team, and you disarm his fail-safes, and then you take out the bit of the bomb that explodes, much like you do with Gas and Traya. And then the team falls apart. So you basically want to be gunning down B2 as quickly as possible, getting him out of hiding first by hitting Magna Guard, gunning down B2, crippling B1 by reducing his stacks, and putting Magna Guard under control if you haven't killed him. And then, yeah, you just want to be blitzing down Grievous as hard as you can. Commander Luke can go into call to action. He can ignore taunt, so Grievous's mark means nothing. You can keep him under control, keep his turn meter down. Basically, once you've got the bomb disarmed and you're just going straight for the bit that explodes, which is Grievous, it becomes a pretty easy match. But it honestly depends on that target lock, and it honestly depends on Grievous's own turn meter train to whether or not it gets dicey. Next Even Stevens team is Gas, and Gas used to be a no-go. You used to be able to kind of beat him with R2 and 3PO in the spare slots, but It was a very dicey match, but thanks to Chewie, Gas is now an even Stevens team. You disarm Gas the same way you disarm Grievous. He's a time bomb team, and thanks to Chewie, it's very easy to chop down Gas's protection and get him sat down. It's very easy to chop down Fives. It's very easy to get rid of Rex and the clones. And then the only bit where you're going to run into trouble when you're taking CLS against Gas is when Gas does his last stand, because obviously he's immune to critical hits and he health steals like mad. But thankfully, if you've got C-3PO in there, you've got a nice potency boost from him, and Chewie in there too, boosting everything. You should be able to keep Gas stun locked, and you won't be able to actually keep removing Gas's turn meter because he gains turn meter at too quick a rate, but you should be able to compensate for that bonus turn meter gain he gets in his last stand with Luke and Han constantly sort of knocking him back. But yeah, Gas is very much an even Stevens team now. It's nowhere near as scary for a pinnacle CLS team. You can do it with pretty decent level of consistency. It's only really the last stand where you're going to run into trouble. And then our third even Stevens team is Padme. This is one of the harder even Stevens teams, but again, thanks to Chewie, it's now doable. This used to be an absolute no-go, just because the attacks out of turn just feed Padme that protection up. Padme is still reasonably tricky though, and I feel I should say that. Probably, along with Grievous, one of the harder even Stevens teams to beat with CLS. Basically, what you want to be doing is weakening Anakin as much as you can and making sure you're targeting Kenobi. Try not to proc his taunt. If you can get that buff immunity on him from Commander Luke, great. If you can't, it doesn't really matter. But you want to be weakening Anakin, let his protection up disappear, use Chewie's AoE. It will wipe out Anakin, hopefully, and then the team is very much neutered and it's less threatening. It's then more just a matter of keeping an eye on the protection up, dispelling it with Chewie or Chewie, and yeah, just keeping everyone under control and just chipping everyone down. It's a very long match as well, I should say. It's very you can run the risk of timing out as well. Something that's awesome though about taking CLS against the Padme team is when they have got protection up, you'll see CLS's turn meter train going like mad, going at full steam, because they're resisting every detrimental effect thanks to the Padme lead. So it kind of works against her in a sense and allows CLS to just take turn after turn after turn after turn, and all the rebels as well, just taking turns after turns after turns. So that's how you beat Padme. You want to get rid of Anakin, and the way you do that is you chip him down a bit, let his protection up disappear, then use Chewie's AoE, and then it's more a matter of just chipping away at the team, one character at a time. So that's how you deal with Padme. Definitely one of the harder, perhaps even maybe the hardest even Stevens team, tied with Grievous. Next on the list is Darth Revan, and Darth Revan used to be an absolute no-go, but again, thanks to that golden boy Chewie, we can now put him in the even Stevens category. Basically, with Darth Revan, you just want to be nuking down Bastila Shan Fallen as fast as possible, because Corrupted Battle Meditation is no joke when it comes to a team that likes to counter and critically hit. And then you just want to be taking out whoever's weakest, whoever you can get at, basically. Just chip down all the characters. Avoid Malak if he's in the team. Avoid Malak like the plague, because you don't want to be triggering his fear on critical hits. But yeah, just take down everyone around Malak at your own pace, basically. And yeah, then where you run into trouble with the Darth Revan team is the final slog. It ends up being 5v1, Commander Luke and his friends versus Malak. And this is where it becomes a problem, because you're going to be constantly proccing fear. You can stun lock Malak once Darth Revan's dead, so that's good, I suppose. And if you can time those stuns for when he's going to take his bonus turn, that is incredibly helpful. But yeah, Darth Revan is not a hard team. It's Malak himself that is the pain in the rear end for CLS to deal with. But thankfully, thanks to Chewie's AoE, it's very easy to get Malak through his free bonus turns. And then it's just a matter of just chipping him down and blasting him down, and you should be good to go. Then we've got Jedi Knight Revan, and Jedi Knight Revan is probably one of the easier even Steven teams now, thanks to Chewie. And the strategy you want to take in against Jedi Knight Revan is you want to be proccing Savior as quickly as possible, bursting down Jolee as quickly as possible, and then the team just falls apart. So you want to be basically going for Revan or Yoda first and chipping them down, triggering that Savior of Revans. And then you want to just be hardlining for Jolee. And what's awesome about hardlining for Jolee is that he's immune to turn meter reduction. So when Han and CLS are hitting him, providing they've debuffed him, providing Commander Luke's debuffed him, you will be feeding your team a nice steady supply of turn meter. It's the same when you hit Revan with either Chewie or Han, and they're supposed to stun. Because he's immune to stun, he'll resist it automatically and grant your team turn meter. So targeting that's another tip I would give for the Jedi Knight Revan team, is targeting the right characters who are immune to certain detrimental effects to help speed your team up if you find you're falling behind. But yeah, thanks to Chupio, it's way too easy now to get Yoda down, proc Savior, then just get rid of Jolee, and you can sit and breathe easy then, because the Jedi without Jolee are incredibly squishy and frail and very easy to bring down with Rebel gunfire. So yeah, that's the Jedi Knight Revan team and how to beat it with CLS. And our final Even Stevens team before we address the mirror match is Jedi Knight Luke. Please bear in mind though, I am talking about a standard Jedi Knight Luke team, not the arena variant. So we're talking Jedi Knight Luke, Hermit, Shaq, and 2 B-Team Jedi, not Jedi Knight Luke, Hermit, and Gas, and Kenobi, and all those really pesky, troublesome, A-grade Jedi. When it comes to fighting the Jedi Knight Luke team, the one thing you need to keep in mind is this hindering mechanic that CLS can do so well, and this pinning down mechanic. You don't want a single Jedi taking a turn, you don't want them using Heroes Arise, you do not want them proccing Luke's lead if you can help it. It's not the end of the world, providing you've managed to neutralize most of the team before the lead gets procced, but you really have to cripple the crap out of Jedi Knight Luke's lineup before you want that lead going off. Otherwise it will get, it becomes a massacre. But yeah, if you can take down everyone, and you can get Hermit out of stealth with Chupio's AoE Dispel, it's very doable. And then you just get rid of Hermit, and then it's all about just keeping Luke in check and keep pushing him back, basically. Don't let him take a turn if possible. If he gets Jedi's will, I'll just say it right here, he will counter the team to death. I have seen it happen to me when I've tried to use CLS Rebels against Jedi Knight Luke. I have seen him counter my Rebels to death, and they're all relicked, by the way. And I've also done it to my enemy when I fought a Jedi Knight, not a Jedi Knight Luke, when I fought a CLS team using just Jedi Knight Luke and Hermit. If he gets that Jedi's will, he'll just counter the Rebels to death. So yeah, do be careful when you're going against it. This is probably, along with Grievous and Padme, one of the more risky and dicey Even Stevens matches for CLS. And last but not least, we have the mirror match, and I'm not going to ramble on this. Just make sure your Han's faster, take out their Chewie as quick as possible, hope they don't take out your Chewie, and their team will fall apart. That is all you need to know about the mirror match. And the final category for counters is, of course, the no-goes. Now, when it comes to the no-goes, you're going to see these 4 in here every single time, and that is the Galactic Legends. Do bear in mind, though, that with the correct modding and the correct setup, that CLS can beat C and beat Supreme Leader Kylo Ren with some level of consistency. Not consistent enough to say that it's a soft counter, but with enough consistency to say that it's not a fluke. So do bear that in mind. If you're in a pinch, if you're in Arena or you're in Grand Arena and you're desperate, there is a chance it can be done. In 3v3, you can also beat the Jedi Master Luke Bastila Watt lineup, which is the bane of most players' existence in the game. Basically what you're doing is you're taking out Watt as soon as possible. You're sort of nuking him down before he can put the tank tech up. Do not let him put the tank tech on Jedi Master Luke. And then you're taking out Bastila, and then it's basically a slugging match between CLS and Jedi Master Luke. Hopefully they don't go after Chewie. If he goes after Chewie, it's game over. But if he doesn't go after Chewie, or you've got Chewie modded like a tank, like I recommend, and he can take Luke's effluxes, you can gently chip him down and eventually get him down. I've done it about 3 or 4 times myself. It's definitely a very consistent counter. But yeah, in a general sense, if you don't have to, don't take Commander Luke against Galactic Legends. Another no-go lineup for CLS is without a doubt an arena variant of the Jedi Knight Luke team. Just don't even try it. You're going to get smashed into oblivion, especially if Gas is on the team and General Kenobi. It's basically a sure loss for your side. And the final two no-goes are not actually teams, they are characters. If you see these characters on the team in the right circumstances, do not take in CLS. The first character is Nest. Basically any team Nest is in, you don't want to take in CLS. Because what will happen is you will take out everyone around Nest and then you'll hit Nest, you'll eventually put her in some kind of stun lock and she'll keep stacking her protection. And you'll keep removing her turn meter because of CLS and Han's basic. And she will become invincible and the match will time out. It's not because she's more powerful than CLS, it's just because of that stupid mechanic. It hard locks out CLS from being able to kill her, because you'll never ramp your damage up enough to bypass that stacking protection she gets. And she'll never take a turn, so it will never reset. The second character is Django Fett, and with Django Fett in a bounty hunter lead, it's totally fine. They won't get their contract off if you're running CLS against it anyway and you're playing it right. And even if they do, it's not the end of the world. The bounty hunter team can take a bit more of a hit. But if the leader is separatist, if you're fighting a separatist led team with Django Fett in it, because what happens is Django gets his contract immediately, so he gets that damage immunity, you can't hurt him, and what you'll end up doing is you won't be able to spread your damage out enough, and you'll end up taking out everyone around him, and then he will be stuck in damage immunity, and you'll keep reducing his turn meter. He'll never take a turn, and the match will once again just time out. So those are the two characters that you do not take CLS against, not because they're more powerful, but just because their mechanics shut CLS out. So that's Nest and Django Fett if the leader is separatist. And that is it for the no-goes. Much like Gas, there isn't much that CLS cannot beat. And what I think actually pushes him out ahead of Gas is the fact that he can counter 2GLs, and he can do it without breaking other teams. Like, you know, Jedi Knight Revan can beat Supreme Leader Kylo and Rey, but you have to break up your Gas team and so forth. CLS, you can take in the standard Pinnacle lineup with, you know, Chewie, Han, 2PO, and C-3PO, and you can... you know, you can take out some Galactic Legends without breaking teams, and I think that's wonderful, and I think that's another strong reason why I think he's the best non-Galactic Legend team in the game. And with that, guys, we've reached the end of the episode. Those of you who have made it this far probably want to go and shave that big long grey beard that's grown since you started watching this video, because it's been a damn long one. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who made it this far, and thank you to everyone who threw me some support on the last video. If you can do it for this video too, that would be awesome. Please let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, you know, any feedback. I'm always happy to get some feedback, so please do let me know down in those comments. Please like this video if you do like this series, show it some support, show it some love. Please subscribe to Moon's channel, the guy really does deserve it, he's a top bloke, and he really does put out good content. And yeah, if you're feeling extra generous, please come over to my channel and throw me a sub at the minimum, or come and check out the series if you're interested. It's a good series if you can get past the crappy artwork and some questionable narration and writing in the first few chapters. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day and take it easy.